So this is an extremely famous passage. And if you're the type of person to come to church in the morning on Christmas Eve, which means you're probably also going to be coming to church tonight on Christmas Eve night, then you have likely heard this story read thousands of times or thereabouts. And the problem with that is that as you hear the same thing and the same story over and over, instead of becoming more familiar, you actually become less familiar. Your mind starts to fill in gaps in the story, because human beings do not like a vacuum. And so when there aren't certain details that connect certain ideas, we tend to make them up. So Joseph has to take his family down to Bethlehem because he lives in Nazareth, and he apparently has to because of this census. And by the way, this is the first census. There's going to be another one in about 10 to 12 years, which will actually start a war. It turns out people don't like to be taxed. And he had to go down because he's of the line of David, and Bethlehem is the city of David. But if you really think about it, that doesn't make a ton of sense. In other words, Luke is implying or thinking something that has been lost. We don't. There's a connection there that we are missing. And so they go down to Bethlehem, and it comes time for Mary to give birth, which is a bummer because that means that she made the 70-mile trek, being great with child, I think the King James Version says, which does not sound like a fun experience. And then it says that she gave birth, she wrapped him in cloths, and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Now, in our kind of, imagination and trying to fill in the gaps, like why was there no room in the inn? Well, maybe because of the census. Then we, over the last few centuries actually, have invented these stories about how Mary and Joseph go from inn to inn and there's no room. And well, okay, if there's a manger there, then that must mean that Jesus was born in like a stable or a barn, because in the modern world, that's the only place you're going to find a feeding trough. And so we've invented this story of Mary and Joseph and the city is full or something like that. The problem is that none of that is actually in the text. And that word for inn, in Greek, it's kataluma. It's a very rare word. It's used 2 other times. And both times it's used, it refers to the upper room. So if you're familiar with the story, when Jesus has his Last Supper, this Passover meal with his disciples, it happens in a kataluma, this upper room. A kataluma is a room that you reside in temporarily. And archaeology has shown that these houses will often have kind of 2 levels, and there's an inner courtyard, and at the bottom of the courtyard is where like a trough would either be cut into the stone or you'd have your manger for the animals you bring in at night. And that makes a lot more sense. Mary and Joseph are staying with somebody. Their upper room was small, and so it's like, where are we going to put this baby? Well, the hay looks soft, so we'll do it like that. And that actually answers another question, which is in a culture, an ancient culture like that, where hospitality is paramount, you would never find an innkeeper or a family or anybody who would turn away especially a young couple and the woman is about to give birth. If that happened, the person who refused to help them out would be beaten and run out of town. That's just how that culture worked. And what I like about this is that this story is very ordinary. Okay, yeah, so the government makes some decisions and then they have to go and do some registration in another town. That's a bummer. That's like, your driver's license expires, so you have to make the trek to the DMV. And you wait in line for 7 hours only to be told that you don't have this one weird piece of documentation, and then you've got to come back. It's okay, yeah, that happens. It's a part of life. It's not fun at all, but whatever. Mary and Joseph are staying with some people, maybe they're family of Joseph, maybe not. And she gives birth. There's no like flash of light and thunder or whatever, at least not yet. The children's movies and the cartoons that depict this always have like, this flash of light and these angels singing or something. But I think more likely it was just a flash of blood and screaming from the mother and then the child, because that's how birth works. And then she wraps him up like she would. And the only weird thing is she's got to put him in a manger. This story's kind of, okay. It's the story of how plenty of people get born. And I guarantee you they are not, announcing that Mary is still a virgin, because who's going to believe them anyway? The story's kind of And I like that. I like that story because it speaks to me right now. For me, this year, it's been hard to get into the Christmas spirit. It's been kind of a long year. My first year here at a new call, and not that you guys are bad or anything, I've come to really love most of you. No, but you get a new job, it's a much bigger job, so you've got a lot of adjustment, a new place, and okay, that's been hard. And this fall, it was a rough semester in my graduate program. It's just been a lot going on, and I'm tired. So to be honest, as I'm approaching Christmas, I feel kind of I'm more worried about the fact that I don't want my son to be disappointed when he doesn't get what he wants for Christmas, and in one case he won't. So I'm nervous about that. Maybe you're nervous about certain family members that you don't get along with, or this was a hard year too, and Christmas is not going to be all that fun. Or you keep thinking about the things that still have to get done, which make it hard to be present. Or for me this morning, like a bunch of things went wrong for the first service. My microphone stopped working and all of this other stuff. And just these little needling things that just wear you down. So to be honest, I feel kind of, okay, Christmas maybe is a little bit, or is more of just something I've got to endure and get through so I can finally relax. I suspect I'm not the only one who feels like that. Hopefully not everybody does. I'm hoping that there's plenty of anticipation. We got a card in the mail from an old friend, and she wrote, "I'm so excited to welcome Jesus once again into our world and our hearts." And I thought, I wish I had her enthusiasm and faith. But I'm just not feeling it right now. Oftentimes, life is messy, and it kind of weighs you down. There's a lot going on to take your focus. And sometimes God has to break into that reality, just like Jesus breaks into our world and our existence. He takes on human flesh. Sometimes God has to do that as well. And so you have these shepherds. And they're outside, I guess, keeping watch over their flocks. Shepherds were low people. They were not respected or trusted. Their testimony in court was not considered valid. They were on the low end of the totem pole. Then an angel appears and says, "Don't panic. Hold on." Now, in order to illustrate this of what I kind of imagine, though this is a lot softer, a lot more beautiful than a terrifying appearance of an angel. This is one of my favorite videos I've ever seen on the internet, which is a lot. And it takes place in a train station, I think, in Germany. It's an Icelandic, I think they're Icelandic, a choir group. They had just apparently given a show, and they sing this Icelandic hymn. And if memory serves, the lyrics for this hymn are at about 1,200 years old. It's very ancient. I don't know what they are. They're in Icelandic. I've read them in English, and they're nice. But watch how they break into this reality, into the bustling train station. So if we could have that video. 'I love how you can still hear the train station. Things are still messy. Even like one of the singers, his gait is a little off, and then you realize he's holding a beer bottle, so that answers that question. But then they come together, and you notice how things start to slow down. People are walking by, and then they stop. It's this moment, this entrance into messy, mundane things. The train station is about as meh as you get. And yet here they are. And so when the shepherds hear this message that Christ the Lord, and I wish that people would stop using the word Christ for at least a year, because the real word should be Messiah. We think of Christ like Jesus Christ, like that's his last name, born to Mary and Joseph Christ or something like that. But it's a title. It's Jesus the Messiah. He's saying the Messiah, the Lord, has been born. The one that you've been waiting for countless generations is now here. And when the host of the angels appear, we tend to think of it like a choir. But the language is actually more aggressive. These are military words. The word host, usually in both New and Old Testaments, denotes an army. This is an invasion. These angels are ready to start a war, to break into our reality. They are announcing that God has done something crazy. That there's been a child born who will finally be the one we've been waiting for. And I love the detail that the angels give, where, you hear about like this child, this Messiah, the one we've been waiting for. God is going to rescue us. He's going to save us from ourselves and our sin. We've got to go find him. So the question would be, well, can we see him? And then the angels say, here's your sign. This is the sign for you. You will find him wrapped in cloths, that's ordinary, in a manger. It's a little odd. If we were to translate that to modern day Orange County English, that would be like, you will find him wrapped up in swaddling clothes, normal, and he will be laying in the dog food bowl. That's what it is. That's a pretty unique thing. And so the shepherds know what to look for, and they find him, and there it is. And just like the angel said, and that's it. And they go home excited because God has finally done what he promised to do. Now, as I was talking to Katie, my wife, about some of this, and she made this comment, or had this insight that, even though things get really messy, Jesus still shows up. Jesus still comes. That even if this year is hard, or if you're like me, you're just like, man, I am just not feeling it this year. This year has been hard. I'm tired. I'm depressed. Jesus still shows up. The birth of Jesus is one of those objective things. His birth is not going to change if I'm not feeling it. That maybe that's the power of Christmas, is that it comes regardless. That the angels announce to these gross, kind of messy shepherds that no one really trusts. That choir starts their song in this train station and nobody knew it was coming, but it just slows down the mess. Or that whether or not I am full of joy and feeling the Christmas spirit and I am so excited, or whether I am just trying to get through it and I'm tired and I just want to rest, Jesus still shows up. Jesus is not afraid of the mess. In fact, Jesus enters into that mess, taking on human existence was a dangerous move. And I kid you not, one of the premier New Testament scholars of our generation put it like this: this was a dangerous move. At any point, he could have just been run over by a camel or something like that. Which is funny, but it's true. When Jesus takes on flesh, he takes on a mortality, the consequence of our sin. He takes on that darkness. He takes on that destruction. He takes on the I just need to get through these next few weeks. I am exhausted from this year. And he takes on our own death and then redeems it. When he walks out of that tomb, a new era of humanity dawned. An era of God making things new. As Jesus goes throughout his ministry, when he encounters something old, he turns it into something new. Leprous skin that is rotting off of people become new skin. People who are deaf or who cannot walk can now walk and can now hear. Jesus makes things new by entering into the mess of the old. My prayer for us, even if we just can't get there for the Christmas spirit, if we're anxious about this or that, we're anxious about spending time with our families, we're worried about our kids or whoever being disappointed, we're struggling with the stress of unemployment or underemployment, relationships are not going well, work is not, whatever you bring that weighs your heart down, Jesus is born into that mess. And he is born into that mess whether you feel it or not. Maybe the joy of Christmas isn't pep and energy, but it's that promise. I pray for you and me the joy of Christmas, because this baby is coming whether we feel like it or not. He is going to redeem humanity whether we feel like it or not. And he is actively making you and me new. And we eventually will feel that. My prayer is that we celebrate this baby, this exciting time of year that sometimes weighs us down. Because Jesus has been born. He comes regardless, and he comes into this mess to redeem it. Let's pray.